Good morning. Happy Friday. We made it to another day. I have a couple things I want to talk about. I want to talk about controlling your controllables and also having a perfectionist mindset and how it will not serve you. So, I see you out there, my perfectionists. Listen, Linda. Nothing is going to change, including that negative self-defeating mindset, unless you do the personal development. Doing the personal development, which is personal, it's going to be different. If you need a suggestion, I'm always happy to help you kind of talk through and figure out some great things. But that was the fastest way I transformed my life and my journey when I was just getting started, was filling my head with other people's thoughts. And I'm not talking about consuming social media and all that stuff. I'm talking about being really intentional around the material and the words I'm consuming. And if it was on a bender, which happened a lot because when I started, I had really unrealistic expectations. I was literally working out for hours a day. Like there were some problems. And so being intentional around the podcasts and the audiobooks that I was consuming when I was out on a walk, that's really how I did most of my PD when I was first getting started. It changed my life. And I know a lot of you are in that space. So if you are in a spiral and you're feeling out of control, or you're feeling really anxious, or you're just giving yourself a harder time than necessary about the status of your journey, I need you to be really honest with yourself around what you're consuming. And if it's not what you need, it's time to make a pivot, okay? So today I shared on Instagram just now, like I got on our morning Zoom, which is every day, 8 a.m. Standard Mountain Time, whatever. And we chatted, and then everyone got off because they'd either done their workout or they're going for walks. And I started, and I was fine until I let myself hit pause for longer than necessary, and I started to scroll, and I started to look at my photos, I started just to do other random things, and I procrastinated. But perfect timing, I got a text message from one of you about how, even though it was a Friday, you were gonna start over with your journey. And my question for her, and my question for you is, why are you starting over? Why are you starting over? Like, you're still on the journey. It's totally okay for it not to be perfect. It's totally okay for you to mess up. You guys, when you start to acknowledge and recognize your slip-ups, your sabotage, that's part of the win. That's part of the journey. It's not, you don't win and have success when it's like this effortless, perfect thing. You're going to struggle. It's going to be hard. And that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean you have to begin again. It means that you're just freaking human, and that's how this works. And today, in the workout, I'm doing 4 weeks for everybody. She said it's supposed to be hard. Like, it's gonna be hard in the beginning. It's hard until you get better. It's hard until you next level your life. It's hard until you next level your mindset. And even then, there's still gonna be obstacles. It's still gonna be challenging. So my question for her was, wasn't even questions. Like, you don't need to start over. I am on day 5 of gut protocol, and do you know how many days have been perfect? This many days have been perfect. I have messed up or gone off plan or eaten more carbs than I'm supposed to or had some sugar every single day. And I could beat myself up and shame myself and like, what's wrong with me? I've done this before. Like, I've done this program successfully before. Why is it so hard? And my initial feeling was that. But then I was like, but that will not serve me, and that will not inspire me to show up. It will not move me forward. So I am asking you to come to your journey, to come to your mess up or your struggle or whatever, with a little bit of compassion and get curious about it. Why is it challenging? Why are you sabotaging in this area? Why are you eating something that maybe you know won't serve you, or you made a deal with yourself and you have gone back on your word? And there's never, ever, ever, ever a reason to start all the way back at day 1. If you are always starting over at day 1, you are missing an integral part of this journey, which is collecting the wins and allowing it to compound. You have to get through an entire program to like feel that feeling and be proud and be okay with the fact that it wasn't perfect, because we're not perfect people. We don't have private chefs. We don't have someone taking care of 550 million things in our households. We're doing all the things and this. And so it's going to be a challenge, and you're gonna mess up, and you're gonna eat your feelings at some point. And that doesn't mean you failed. You fail when you quit. You fail when you say, oh, look at me, I messed up. I'm never gonna do this again. That's where the failure is. And none of of you are quitters and none of you are failing. You're just real people on the journey with me. So give yourself a little bit of grace, but it's time to reframe that thought from, I totally messed up and I have to go back to square one, to, okay, this is where I'm at, and I'm gonna meet myself with compassion, and I'm also gonna hold myself to my promise. I'm gonna get in the middle of the bed. She did a great job by texting me. You're gonna get on Zoom, you're gonna post in the groups, you're just gonna lean into that space. So I am totally rocking a super imperfect journey over here, and it's still my journey. I'm not gonna quit. I'm just gonna keep going, and I'm gonna do my best, and I'm gonna surrender the rest, and that's all there is to say about it, okay? On the flip side of this, well, this is actually kind of connected, because sometimes we get anxious with things outside of our control because we want to control them, obviously, and that is still me at times. This is something else I've really had to surrender to God and do tons of personal development around, the control freak part, okay? So control your controllables. I want that to be your mantra today. If you're struggling with anxiety, I really want you to get some Bach flower or some kind of other holistic thing that will help support you. Do an energy practice. I sometimes, when I'm feeling super anxious and like everything's out of control and I can't turn my brain off, I will literally imagine, some of you aren't religious, so you're like, okay, this is weird, but I will literally imagine taking all of my worries and freakouts and fears and putting them in a box, like a box, a pretty box, and I wrap it in my mind, and I put a big bow on it, and I imagine that God has a doorstep, and I DoorDash, or what is it? I ding dong ditch. I put all those things, I literally imagine all those things going in the box and then wrapping it up with a pretty bow. And then I put it on the door and I ring the bell, and then I say, it's not mine to worry about. It's not mine to try and manage. You just control your controllables, which means you do the things you can do. You take care of yourself, you prioritize rest, you prioritize play, you layer in the movement. Movement and PD, those are the personal development, those are how I manage my anxiety. That's how I literally manage my crazy train. And there's days where maybe I'll go for like 2 or 3 walks, or I will move my body just a little bit multiple times, because it's like this reset for me. Like if I can't control everything else, especially when my kids were little, I could control that. It helps me. Maybe it will help you, maybe it won't, maybe you're like, whatever, that's crazy. But these are things that help me. So if you're struggling with perfectionism, if you're struggling with an over anxious, busy mind, I want you, number 1, to control your controllables. And number 2, I want you to literally replace your thoughts and your brain reel with someone else's words. When I was first getting started, I listened to a lot of Shailene Johnson. I don't listen to her podcast anymore, so I don't know if that would be helpful. Another one I listened to a lot of early on was Lori Harder. And who else did I listen to? I always go back to Trent Shelton. Trent Shelton, I think, is kind of like, I love Trent Shelton's podcast. I always get some value out of it. So, there's lots of different resources. If you're struggling in a certain area of your life, if it's your self-talk, if it's your self-belief, maybe it's a relationship issue, maybe it's money, whatever area you're struggling in, you can view it as a struggle, or you can manipulate your brain and tell yourself this is an opportunity for growth, for surrender, for compassion. You're not always sucking. You're not always having to be a work in progress in a negative way. We get to be a work in progress. We get to have an opportunity to begin again and to realign and to be imperfect, you guys. Be vulnerable in that imperfection. When you are, it creates a superpower. Instead of thinking that your vulnerability and the area that you're really struggling in is a weakness, you can reframe it in your brain. And I'm telling you that because I've done it over and over and over, and took a lot of personal development, took a lot of gentleness, it took a lot of intentional thought shifting for me to get to this place. But if I can do it, you can do it. I was so negative. I was so negative when I first got started, and I thought I was just a realist, but I was not. I was just negative. And we grow up with filters. But you're not a kid anymore. You're not a freaking baby. You are a grown-ass woman, and you get to decide, is this thing feeling empowered to me? Am I building myself up? Am I reminding myself of my capabilities? Am I reminding myself of my truth? Or am I just picking myself apart and highlighting all the ways it's not enough and it's never gonna be? Which one feels better? Lean into the one that feels better. And we're not talking about Cheetos. We're talking about you owning your imperfect, messy journey. Nothing wrong with it. I think that, You know, we will never get to this perfect level. There will always be another thing to grow and to lean into and to next level. And I don't know about you, but I think that's exciting. It doesn't fatigue me because I've had to do the brain work around it. It doesn't fatigue me. It's not overwhelming because it's just one thing at a time. You don't need to go back to day one. You don't ever have to start over. You just realign and you refocus and you recommit. So if you're on day 6 of gut protocol, or you're in the middle of a program and you're kind of doubting yourself, you don't need to doubt yourself. We're all there with you. It's okay. You just do the next right thing. You collect your freaking wins. You change that filter in your brain by listening and consuming other people's words that inspire you. And you just trust the process because it's not going to be an overnight thing, right? Okay, so I got my workout in. I'm about to go for a walk, and I am in the middle of listening to a new audiobook by Jennifer Allwood. What's it called? Get Unstuck, I think is what it's called. Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. And then I'm gonna catch up on messages, so if you're in my inbox, I will be with you shortly-ish. No, not really, later today. But anyways, I just wanna remind you, it doesn't have to be perfect. Every single day, every single action, it all compounds. So be proud of yourself. Collect those wins. Start a journal if you need to and be like, I'm really proud of these 3 things. These 3 things I did today move me closer to my goal. And some days you're gonna have to be super creative to come up with those wins. But the more you do this, it changes your filter and you start to go throughout your day looking for opportunities and things that you can log as a win. And B, it changes everything. Instead of it happening to me and I'm behind and this feels crappy, instead you can be like, I'm a freaking warrior princess and I can do all the things that come my way. It's gonna be okay, because it is. It's always gonna work out. It always works out. Even in the hardest, most shittiest, awful things that can potentially happen, you will be okay. You will be okay, okay?